In today's video, we'll take a look at even more tips and mistakes you want to avoid in Outer Worlds 2. There are actually many long-term decisions that can affect your whole playthrough if you don't keep an eye out for them, which is why I want to give you a heads up about some of them, plus many more things to help you out in your journey. At number 1, you have to keep in mind that Outer Worlds 2 only has one single character respec through the whole game, and that literally happens right after the prologue is finished. This is by design, mind you, and Obsidian Entertainment did announce this choice before the game even came out, but what this means is your decisions from here on out carry that much more weight. That is why what you can do is right as you jump into the prologue, you can check and plan out what route you want to take with your current character build. The game lets you highlight perks as favorites, so that makes that decision even easier, and it gives you all of the details needed to unlock them in the first place, such as minimum skill requirements or previous perks to have active. And if you decide you don't like what you just chose, you do have that one singular choice to respec once you're back to your ship. Just remember, you will not get another choice like that anywhere else in the game. Which brings us to number 2, and another important aspect is that many of the decisions that you take actually do have long-term consequences, especially when it comes to decisions involving the main narrative. And specifically, there are many occasions when your decisions will affect places you were previously visiting, like for example, certain locations either being completely overrun by enemies and as a result having various vendors or NPCs inside completely inaccessible, all the way to getting certain locations completely and utterly destroyed. So that is why whenever you go into new places, my recommendation is to immediately check out all of the vendors and possibly all of the NPCs to pretty much buy any item you might miss later down the line, or complete any side quest that you might miss out similarly later down the line, which means missing out on many possible upgrades, mods, even weapons or decryption keys. However, there's also an upside to all of this, which brings us to number 3, and that is the fact that pretty much everything in this game can be either found or completed in more than just one way. Let's say, for example, you want to enter a building, but the door is locked and you're lacking the skill necessary to open that up. Well, chances are that there may be at least one other entrance or way to go inside. Maybe another adjacent door that you haven't paid attention to, or maybe a ledge or an air vent you can squeeze through, or even the rooftop, if you have another point of jumping on it, may provide access to what's inside. The same goes with completing objectives and getting help from others to progress points in missions. Many times they will only do it if you find some key pieces of information, and usually they tend to be rather close by, like typically on some terminal that you can read the logs and the messages of. And once you do that, you're going to get a new dialogue option that you can use to more easily progress in that specific quest without having to do anything extra. But really, this just brings us to the point that you should always interact with terminals no matter what. Besides this, you will also get other relevant info, such as passwords that you can use to open up safes, all the way to puzzles involving quizzes for which the answers I would only find out if I interacted with these types of objects out into the environment. Speaking of which, at number 4, you're going to find a lot of these log boxes that give some of the best gear actually in the game. However, you're going to require decryption keys, and these decryption keys aren't just found out in the open world. You're going to find pretty much every single major vendor in most of the locations selling at least one, sometimes even 2 whole decryption keys for you to purchase. And it might seem unimportant at first, you may be tempted to hold on your money. I actually recommend always checking vendors out and purchasing the decryption keys at the very least. There are so many of these log boxes you're going to eventually find in the game that it's totally worth it to spend that extra sum of money on them, but at least have something great that later on may change your build up or provide an awesome new power. So when you're back to the ship, go to the lockbox machine and don't just look out for the one that's in front of you. You can actually filter through the ones available via these buttons to the left side. Since you're going to have a limited number of keys at any given time, you're never going to have the possibility to unlock all of them without some massive involvement into exploration. So in this case, you may want to pay attention to the ones that fit your build or provide an awesome power that really bring your character to the next level. Also, on a quick note, if at any point this video proved to be useful up until now, then subscribing to the channel and leaving a like on the video would definitely help me a lot. Which brings us to number 5, and the big mistake is accepting flaws without thinking of long-term consequences. Flaws actually provide some very interesting buffs, but also come with some major downsides sometimes. And one of the first flaws you can actually get is right from the character creation screen, assuming that you have picked at least 2 traits onto the left side screen. And in this case, after playing the game and also after a lot of you guys recommending this to me, I think that dumb is actually indeed the least damaging flaw we can get right here, compared to sickly and abrasive, which actually affect your HP, and the other one affects your faction reputation. Dumb, on the other hand, is just common sense looking more at it. Yes, it locks you out of the 5 of the 12 available skills, but it's not like you're going to have enough skill points anyway to even become a jack of all trades in one single playthrough, simply because the max level is just 30. The max number of extra skill points you can get besides the starting one are just 58. Which means only being able to max out 3 skills at the very most, and maybe having some spare for some extra points into a 4th one. But realistically, if you're going specialized with a certain type of build, you're going to max out 2 to 3 and focus on those specifically to get the most out of the specific build you're going with. Anything more is just a distraction, but it's up to you how you want to play your game. For the flaws that occur naturally by playing and performing certain actions, you will still want to read the fine print, because a lot of them actually can be quite damaging. Especially flawed is one of the best examples, as it forces you to accept all the flaws from this point on, including their downsides. So unless you're going with a full flaw playthrough, I don't recommend this for a beginner just yet. But there are others that may be a little bit better to deal with. Like for example, overprepared can make a lot of sense for builds that use weapons with long reload animation and high magazine sizes. So this is going to increase your magazine size even more, but it drastically reduces your damage for 8 seconds if you hit empty on the magazine. However, if your weapon doesn't reload too often, or if you just can increase your magazine size even more via the perk and via extra mods, you can minimize those downsides to bare minimum. Besides that, consumerism is another pretty straightforward one to get. You can pretty much get this on most of the playthroughs because the downsides are minimal. So you're going to mostly interact with vendors from the purchasing side, so having discounts to prices is actually quite beneficial. And for the junk and items that you actually get yourself, you're mostly going to want to break them down anyway for the extra crafting parts you can later on use. Which brings me to the next point, and that is, don't just sell the junk to the vendors, because you're going to miss out on a lot of crafting components. And this is one of the mistakes I was doing early on. I thought that I would need money a lot more than I thought I did, but in reality, just completing side missions, looting everything, and just going through the main narrative, I had more than enough excess of bits to pretty much afford everything I wanted from most of the vendors. And especially so, you're going to notice you have a lot of duplicates in the weapon and the armor category. You can easily mark these as junk, and if you do have a lot of them, which you will by the time you hit level 30, you can actually split them. So let's say sell a batch for some money in case you need it, but also keep some extras to break down in case you need to craft a better mod or to create another mod so that you can add it to a piece of gear that really augments your build up. There are many ways to go about this, but don't always sell at the vendor. Keep some for the spare parts. And since we talked about inventory at number 7, literally loot everything. You pretty much have no downsides looting and carrying a whole planet worth of items and loot in your inventory. That is because you don't seem to have any weight limits, and there's also a massive capacity to carry here. So literally the only time I ever cleared out my inventory was once I literally finished the game. I had no reason to delete anything, and trust me, I literally looted everything that came into my path. Similarly, you also want to steal everything if there's nobody to see you. That's because there's literally no downside to it. Nobody will check your inventory. There's no guards to check that out like how it was in Baldur's Gate 3. So feel free to just grab everything, even from the enemy's inventory. That is why even lock picking, going with 1 point into pickpocketing after that, may be helpful. There are many NPCs which hold keys to specific containers with extra loot that you can use. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these have actually been nerfed after the day 1 patch, so it's no longer as worth it as it was before, but you may still find occasions when having this extra access to a security key may help you give access to something else instead, like a door or a container, way quicker than you normally would. And while we were on the subject of stealing everything on my first playthrough, it took me about like 15 hours to realize there is a light torch in this game for you to light things up, especially dark places or indoors where you don't have many sources of light. This is by default done with L on the keyboard and mouse. There should be an equivalent for the controller as well that you can check out in the menu. So use it. It's going to help you a lot, not going in like a blind bat. Now we also have to talk about improving your character stats and odds of survival, and one of the main ways of doing that is via the pitch ball as well as the toss ball cards that you're going to find in the game. And this may look like something completely unimportant because it only gives you incremental changes, so stuff like +1 to your HP or critical chance or critical damage and other stats as well, but look how many you can get by the time you reach like level 20 plus. You can pretty much stack a lot of extra stats just by focusing on exploration and looking out for the cards basically that you can get in pretty much every single corner of the map. You will find them on surfaces, inside containers, upon NPC corpses. You will even have them stuck on walls and other structures, so always look out for these small cards. They will be worth it, especially as you progress and gain the benefits out of them. However, let's move on to some extra combat tips as well to improve your odds of survival. Obviously, one of the best ways to immediately increase your damage is to just mod weapons. You can change so many aspects of weapons, from what they fire to how far you can see with them, all the way to having the capability of penetrating armor, or at least partially. And for that reason, I highly encourage you to check out all of the damage types in the game. We have 5 besides the physical, so 6 in total, and some of them are better than others at specific types of enemies. Shock, for example, being an amazing one for any type of robotic enemy, not just because it can end up electrocuting them. So this is literally going to apply a paralyze effect, which holds them in place for a number of seconds, but you will even cause zaps of electricity to hit other targets nearby. So it's one of my favorite early on for some extra AoE and also keeping enemies stunned long enough that you can survive for longer and unleash more damage uninterrupted. I also recently came to love Frost a lot because of the chill effect. It drastically slows down targets, even completely removes their sprint and slide ability. And normally targets for me seem to die way quicker than I am able to even freeze them in place, but if you do get to freeze them in place, they end up unable to move at all, which helps a ton. Corrosion is also great, but against enemies with armor, you apply a vulnerable debuff so that literally eats away their armor all the way to eventually completely dissolving them. So that's going to be really cool. Plasma for the burn effect and the extra explosion if you build it up, but to be honest, I was playing with a stealth build and Plasma proved to be so strong with the Last Whisper. Like, it makes it one of the best weapons in the game. At least on the normal difficulty I played, it just made the game a breeze from that point on. And obviously you can build around this, but it works great against enemies with naked HP bars. There's also the N-Ray at the end. This is pretty much going to be your radiation damage. It also deals some extra AoE to surrounding targets, but if you fully max it out and stack it on the target, they automatically get one-shotted. So that can actually be quite useful if you're going with a build that focuses on these types of weapons. That is why for the next tip is to always check out the vendors, like I said before, for these types of mods. A lot of them will actually provide access to new mods as you progress to new planets, and if you want to level up and make much better versions of the weapons you get along the way, you will want to pay attention to these vendors and purchase everything from them, or at the very least for the weapons you're going to be using out the most. Also, on a similar note about combat, you will pretty much always want to interact with the mat base, these blue healing containers that you will find on walls and even on your ship. Even if you're full HP, you will still want to use this because it's going to give you healing charges for your inhaler. So that's going to help a ton. There were occasions during which I ended up in big boss fights and I had no charges left. But if you look at this, you will see that we actually get extra inhaler charges. So you can go in a combat with like 10, 20 even, or more inhaler charges because you just pick everything along the way. And also keep in mind that the one on your ship can reset, so you can always travel back to the incognito and heal yourself up really quickly if you don't have another source nearby. In addition to this, in the early game, you only start with one ammo recipe, but if you want some of the others like biomass canisters, mini rockets, plasma charges, shells and whatnot, you will want to buy the recipes from the vending machines you're going to eventually encounter. So this is something that you can literally purchase from almost any vending machine from the second map and onwards. In this case, they should hold the majority of them. So you're going to have access to more and more of these as you progress in the game, but by the second or third planet, you should have plenty enough recipes to purchase. And all of this brings us to the final point on the list, and that is saving as often as you possibly can. You have 100 save slots, including the 3 ones that you get via autosaves, and definitely make use out of them. That should be plenty enough for any major playthrough. In this case, you can easily go back and test out maybe dialogue options or specific story outcomes. There are many occasions, especially later down in the main narrative, when getting a specific good outcome or most rewarding outcome of a story moment will require you to complete extra objectives. So if you didn't pay attention to them or skip them, this way you can just track back a little bit and check out what you missed out and possibly continue from that branch out. My recommendation is to always save before key moments so that you can actually go back and have a point of return to go to. But that pretty much concludes today's video. As always, if you found it useful, a like on the video would be appreciated. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And check out what you missed out and possibly continue from that branch out. My recommendation is to always save before key moments so that you can actually go back and have a point of return to go to. But that pretty much concludes today's video. As always, if you found it useful, a like on the video would be appreciated. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video.